Hey there. So, my next guest, really awesome. He's got his own podcast that he's been running for 7 years, and he gives some fantastic advice on balancing life, balancing, the family, the job, the podcast, as well as, some tips and tricks on how to develop a podcast and have it running for this long, getting over your fear. This was a really fun one, and I know you all are going to enjoy it. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. And today I have a very special guest with us. I have Paul Murphy. Hey there, Paul. How's it going?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm very glad you can join us. Where do you hail from, Paul?
Atlanta, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta.
Beautiful. So you guys are having some nice weather at the moment, right?
This is the best time of year. So in Georgia, we sometimes get all the seasons in the span of a week. It can be up and down. But as far as if I were to pick a moment in time during the year, this is my favorite time of year.
I love it. We just turned off summer here in Las Vegas. It is the strangest thing. I don't know if you've ever seen this happen before, but I didn't. Like, it's 95, 95, 95, 82. Like, it's just, there's no summer. Like, it just ends. Like, just no
Weird.
fall. Just,
Yeah.
All right. So, Paul, I like to get the show started just getting right into it. So why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
So my name is Paul Murphy. I'm a father. I have two children, two boys. I live in Atlanta, like was said. I work in like contracts. That's what I do is my personal life or my business life. And then in my hobby time, that's like equally is takes up a portion of everything for me. I play this game called Warhammer 40K. I play Magic, mostly Warhammer 40K, and I run a podcast, and I am a content producer.
I love it. All right. And we are going to break down all of that here in just a second. But before I get started, I ask every guest a single question. So I'm going to ask you just like I ask everybody else. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Paul?
Oh, that's so tough because the world has gotten way more. 5 years ago, I would have said maybe like a 7, but by today's standard, I'm probably a 5 or 6.
I love that answer. Now, why? Why is that?
Well, I think that the whole like nerd culture has become a lot more accepted. I mean, the way it shows like Big Bang Theory and like D&D is even okay to talk about and stuff now. I mean, some people, they pretend they don't know about that stuff or whatever, but think of like even the comic movies, what's played out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe over the last 12 years or whatever is one of my favorite stories from when I was a 13, 14-year-old in comics. So anyway, we're all more aware of that kind of stuff, and so you could realistically have a conversation about this stuff at the water cooler if we ever get to do that again. Whereas before, 5 years ago, you couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me ask you this: how happy or disappointed with the DC movies were you?
They're so bad, man. They're just so bad. I think, okay, I like the actors and I like the enthusiasm that they bring. I think that somewhere along the way it gets overproduced or sabotaged. Or let me tell you this. Look, you asked for one man. This is one man's opinion. Is that the Marvel movies have stuck closer to the original source material, and then at some point, and this has been the sabotage of almost every comic movie that predates that, the big budget director or something takes over, or they claim it's the studio or whatever. Who knows? Somebody gets involved that brings you away from the core, and I think the DC movies betray the core too much.
Are you trying to tell me that Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Mr. Freeze going chill out was not good?
No, I'm going to break away and say I actually love all those early Batman movies. Because they were that. I mean, to me, they were that bridge between like the '60s TV show and the comic. Like, I didn't think Michael Keaton was going to be able. Now, look, when that came out, I was an actual, a real kid, and then someone explained to me, oh, he played Beetlejuice. Like, oh, I love Beetlejuice. Like, oh, I'm on board with Michael Keaton or whatever. But I did. There was some grown moments in the Batman movies, but I didn't mind them.
I love it. All right, Paul. So this is the Gamerpreneur Podcast. So I do need your gaming cred. When did you first start playing video games?
I mean, ColecoVision back in the 80s. That was Qbert. I remember calling Nintendo Power and just asking, "Hey, how many times is there a record for how many times Metroid has been beaten in a row without dying?" because I think I just beat it. I beat it 16 times in a row without dying, and they were like, "Yeah, that sounds like the record to me." I was like, "Oh, great,"
Was that the 6 cents a minute line?
But probably, again, I was really into it. Started playing, I guess I was when Atari. I was probably alive when Atari came out, but I didn't necessarily care for Atari. So when ColecoVision hit, I shouldn't say I didn't care for Atari. Of course, I loved it, Atari, but ColecoVision was like revolutionary. Is what it seemed like, and it had that perfect mix between like cool graphics, playability, and accessibility, and I loved it. And then from then on, it was just to Nintendo, and off from there. I'm more of a Nintendo fan than anybody else, any other producer.
Wonderful. All right. So what games are you playing now? You got the Warhammer 40K and Magic. But
Yeah, so gaming wise, I mean, as far as like video games, I play a little Overwatch. I mean, I'm a filthy casual at best at Overwatch.
I'm right there with you.
I play some games, Mario Kart. I play some games, and then Zelda. I play through Zelda with my youngest. Tabletop games. I'm actually a big board game fan, a huge board game fan. I love the ones that you can boil down into a 30 or 45-minute experience with someone, but I also love the ones that take 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours to play. But Warhammer is basically like my prime game. That's what I spend most of my time doing is playing and or building or talking about Warhammer 40,000 specifically.
That's fantastic. Now I'm gonna throw you a curveball and ask, if I put you on a desert island with only one game, video game or board game, which one would it be?
It'd have to be Warhammer. I guess board game though. Takedo. Well, am I by myself?
You are by yourself.
Ooh, that's tough. Yeah. I don't know. Just give me a deck of cards if I'm by myself. But I guess actually, I feel like if you give me enough figures for Warhammer, I could be self sufficient.
I love it. Okay, so Paul, let's get over to the preneur part. Now, what do you do? Before we got on, you said there's a difference between what you do IRL and your kind of hobbies. So let's start with your IRL. You said you do contracts. What does that mean?
I do. So I do contract data management for a money management firm. That's what I do. So that's my professional life. That's what enables me to do the hobbies that I do.
Okay, and what does that entail?
So it has to do with requirements gathering, figuring out what needs to. Everything that I do there normally makes its way onto a line item in a contract. So it has to be very specific, very thorough, so yeah, without getting like super deep into the weeds, it's basically that. It's and then once we bring on board that, it's then managing the life of that. So I guess some degree of vendor management, some degree of procurement, and then all the trappings that go into that.
Okay, what's your professional background? How did you even end up doing that?
That's an interesting question. So before this, I worked for a commodities exchange, and I managed the support desk for Europe and Singapore. Now, I say that I was one guy that worked 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. And that was, and you had to kind of look at the life of what the exchange did, the relationships between the traders and the clearing firms and all that other kind of stuff. But I really got my hands on technology. And then when I jumped over to this other role, that technology with the financial markets in mind kind of led me into this other thing, because what I can do is I can speak the different languages between them. I'm like the translator between the super tech folks and the super financial people. And I don't want to claim to be great at either one, but I can certainly pass along a message from this guy to this guy in a way that they all both understand, where before they would probably just be staring at each other and basically speaking gibberish to each other.
Very cool. So does that mean you're killing it over on Robinhood?
Wait, what is that?
Robinhood? It's a trading platform I think you can do on your phone now.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. No, I'm not actually. I'm removed from that. I don't actually do the stuff that's left for way more qualified people to do. But if you were to tell me that you needed something involved in that or something to help you enable you to do that, I could find the right thing for you and then make sure that the support people around you knew what to do and how to implement it.
Okay, beautiful. Now let's talk about your passion. Tell me all about it, please.
Oh, so I'm gonna the cop out answer. My kids, it's like, of course, everything is about them.
Right.
Is about the family. But I will say that my family is amazing at they're enablers is the bad term, but they are sympathetic to what fuels me, keeps me going. So comic books, video games to some extent. Like I play some mobile games, some app games, and then my other hobbies like the Warhammer stuff. It takes a lot of time. It really does eat up a lot of time, or you can choose to let it eat up a lot of time, and they are really sympathetic to that and enable me to do that. Give me the space to do that.
Okay, beautiful. Now, tell me more about your podcast, please.
Oh yeah, so I run a show. The podcast is called Forge the Narrative. Uh, Full context, I use that term slightly ironically because we have kind of like a quasi competitive spin on things for the game Warhammer 40,000. So we do a weekly show, about an hour a week, where we have on industry interviews, our own personal commentary and take on things. We talk about some of the new stuff that's come out, but apart from just the new stuff that's come out, we talk about how to use it. Like, how are you going to get the effect that you want out of this? Because there's an element to this. I mentioned the time element. There's also a purchase element. You're buying things, and then we kind of give somewhat advice on how to make that work efficiently. But then we also take time to be how do you want it? Like, how do you want to experience this? We take a lot of listener feedback and give some thoughts on that kind of stuff.
Very interesting. Now, why did you decide to do that? Why did you start this whole journey?
So, because I talk a lot about Warhammer. That's basically it. So it was one of those to where, like, we talk a lot about Warhammer. Me and my peer group at the time, we're good at it. We have strategies about how to be efficient with it. Either strategic in our purchases, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean just figuring out, I want an effect out of this, and what do I need to get to do that? There's a lot of complexity, and there's lots of different factions, lots of different. Did you ever play like StarCraft?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there's three at least that I'm aware of, three major factions in StarCraft. There's like 15 major factions in Warhammer, and there's different ways, you can attack the balance and the way you come at the game from different ways, and so there's a lot of room in there to discuss that. There's a lot of variance in how you talk about it, and I thought, what, we can talk about it. Maybe somebody might want to listen to it, and that's what got us into podcasting.
Wonderful. And how long have you been doing it?
7 years. Yeah,
7 years. And how's it going?
I think I'm real proud of the show. Real proud of the people that have been on the show. It's I have a consistent cast. I try not to shift the cast up too much, but the people that come and take their time, because an hour of audio is not. It doesn't take an hour to record. It doesn't take an hour to produce. There's all this stuff that goes into it. And the people that take the time to do that, real happy with, and yeah, it's going well. So real fortunate that people are that want to come on and want to do it, and then even more fortunate that people want to listen.
Okay, wonderful. So one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give my audience is that they need to start a podcast. So with 7 years under your belt, like mine, our 1 year anniversary was yesterday. So when this comes out, it'll be several weeks. But mine, it was personally yesterday. I've been 1 year. What have you learned over those 7 years that you could pass on to people looking to start?
Oh, real talk. Audio quality. Imagine the format, right? So if they're only listening to you, and we live in a culture to where people are trying to they want to find ways to kind of discount everything, to rule out things, to cut out the noise, what they don't want in their lives, and that's respect. I respect that or whatever. But when someone is listening to you and all that they hear is the audio, all they have to go on. If your audio is bad, they're going to have one more reason to disconnect from you. And so, doing that little bit of due diligence. I mean, microphones are not super expensive, now. And then some of the editing that I do for podcast is quite literally 2 or 3 clicks. And some people don't even do that. They don't understand why they should do it. And that's the advice I could pass on, is figure out some of the base level of editing, and then be somewhat strict on people that want to come on your show to make sure that they've got decent audio. Now, look, you make exceptions, right? I mean, you get your idol and they're having a little connection issue. You figure it out. You do what you got to do, right? But like your standard for audio should be high, and then learn some base things for editing. Not everyone does that.
All right. Now, is that something you had to learn along the way? Did you like just start off on your phone, or how did it start?
I'm a bit of a planner, so I did a lot of research. So I did research on, and when I say research, I'm a mad Googler, whatever, and
That's how I did
read.
my law research when I was an
Yeah,
attorney. So there's nothing wrong with it.
that's how a lot of things happen in this world right now. The YouTube University, the internet, do it. Like, if it's out there, find a credible source and things that work, replicable things, do it. But I did a lot of research on like what the average commute time was. What is the recommended commercial time if you're going to have one at all? Just things that what is clipping? Like you don't know that stuff starting out, but having a desire to put some thought into it. That's it. I mean, because a lot of people like. It would have been very easy. And my first episode was not great, but it would have been easy for me to think like, oh, people like listening people are probably going to like listening to us talk. Let me just ride off of that. Like there are some, like, look at YouTube. There are some amazingly talented people out there with 10 subscribers. Yeah, so it's more than that. There's a mixture of things, and so you got to find that right balance of what you can do. And look, don't let. I guess first advice, and I should have let off with this, is like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So if you are passionate about what you have to do, then get it out there. And then maybe you get a bite, and that incentivizes you to take it to that next step. So do it. Don't let that in there. But I think there's ways that you can get off the blocks a little bit easy. I know I'm not supposed to use my monster, I got, you come
Oh,
close
go
to the
right ahead.
camera, it's monster hands. I apologize, but I talk with my hands, which also nobody sees because I'm an audio show. Um, but you can get off the starting block a little bit easier with all the information that's available around you. So take advantage of it.
Fantastic. Okay. Now, what was the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome with your show, if any?
So getting the I'm a terrible self promoter. Like, I just don't, like, I'm almost embarrassed to link the show, to other places. I shouldn't. I mean, that's I don't. I mean, tongue in cheek. I'm saying that, right? But yeah, you gotta. I think Eminem says this: if your CD's on fire, you got to put it out yourself. You know, and and so you do it. You gotta get out there. And so feeling comfortable sharing with folks, even after you've gone through the process of recording and doing it, then putting it out there is a big challenge.
So even after 7 years, you're still having difficulty with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, because there's always a new thing. Do I share it on Twitter? Do I do it on Instagram? Do I put it in a story? I've already put it on I've already put a picture. Do I then put it? I mean, there's all these ways that you can you know hold yourself back. And look, reserve is, that, look, there's a component, but don't let it. I think finding that a way, for a way not to rule you, is difficult.
Okay. And what are you doing to be able to overcome that fear? Because that's all it really is, right? It's fear.
Clicking send,
Just do it.
doing it,
Just Nike.
finding friends that will help you do it, like, so that's it. So this guy's like, yeah, hey, I'll do it. Okay, well, I've always wanted to do this, but I've never having, and finding the time. So a lot of people say that they don't have time to do things, but what they really mean is they haven't prioritized it. And so aligning my priorities to what my actual goals are is also another kind of a hurdle. And that's, so those things, I think they're related, but they're slightly different.
And on that note, how are you balancing? Like, you've got the show you do every week, you've done for 7 years.
Yeah.
How are you balancing your work life and your family on top of it all?
So again, my family is forgiving and as patient and loving as they are, and they really are. I do my recording in the evenings after they've gone to bed, so I extend my night and not impact theirs. So we still have the bedtime routines with the youngest. Still have vegging out, watching some TV time with the wife. We all have dinner together. We all do that. But then at 10 p.m., that's when I start my recording.
10 p.m. is when you start your recording, and it's an hour-long show, but it requires more time.
Say 2.5 hours to do that.
Get what, 4 hours of sleep a night?
On that night, about that, and then I do editing on Saturday, and I try to get up a little earlier in that morning to do it.
Okay, fantastic, Paul. This is so cool. Now, talk about you a little more personally, if we can. You see, I believe we learn the most in our lives from our failures. When life smacks you in the face, something just goes completely sideways. You got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, figure out what went wrong, and then move forward. So I'd like to ask, what do you consider your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
Not starting sooner on things. So I'm a bit of a late starter. I mean, that's real. I mean, in life in general, like I mean, I've always, I shouldn't say always, but I found I'm a survivor, kind of thing, as far as that kind of stuff goes. Found ways to take myself out to dinner and whatever, make sure I had a roof over my head and that kind of stuff. But I didn't. What people might consider the textbook path. It took me a long time to figure out what that meant for me. And so the way I describe it to others now is that a year from now, you could even yourself. You said you mentioned your anniversary. I mean, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or whatever, but I think you probably could have convinced yourself not to do this, not to embark on this. And then a year from now, you would have been thinking, like, wouldn't it have been great if I started a year ago? And then that may stop you from doing it now. So, do it if make the time, prioritize it right. It's like learning martial arts. Like I'm never going to learn to play my favorite guitar solo. I'm never going to. But I'm certainly never going to learn it if I don't start. Yeah, it's you know what I mean. So
absolutely, no, I get it.
And you'll have people that will tell you that. I've even had I knew a guy who was, I mean, he said fairly good at guitar. I mean, guys, good at guitar. Let's just call him good at guitar. He'll tell you that you'll never be good at guitar, and you can't listen to that kind of stuff if you really want to be good at guitar.
Oh, absolutely. You really just have to get those people out of your life.
Yeah, or patently ignore them. It's like it's one of those to where I hear what you're saying, and that's what you believe. I have to try. I have it in me. If you have it in you, try to get it out and then put on the page somewhere. I say on the page because that's a writing thing or whatever. I want to write the great American novel, but you know why I'm never going to do it? Because I don't start writing. Like I don't remember exactly which writer said this, but he said writers write, and I have to sing that's the same. Songwriters sing, or songwriters write songs, song singers sing, Warhammer players Warham. Like it's you gotta do it.
Beautiful. All right. A little more. What is something you're working to improve on in yourself today?
That's a pretty great question. I think that same thing with prioritizing. Like I know that I want to do more content. I want to do more things, but it's like at the right now my perception is I don't have the time. But really what that means is I'm not prioritizing it, or I have to have real solid discussions with myself about what do I prioritize? Like, how am I prioritizing? And am I putting enough, I mean, granted, there only is so many minutes and hours in a day, right? But do I want to take away from something over there to put it in this thing that I think I really care about? And then question it, do I really care enough about that? Is that helping me feel better? And that's what I'm trying to work on, is figure out exactly where my priorities are with what I say I want to do for myself, and that's in my hobby realm or whatever.
Wonderful. Oh, that's beautiful, Paul. Now, Paul, thank you so much for. I'm a talker too with my hands, and this is the first time I'm really using my mic. So I'm like, this has been fantastic. How do people find you? Where are you at on social media? How do they get to your podcast?
So you can find me at forgethenarrative.net. I'm also on every aggregator. So Forge, THE Narrative. I'm not going to try to spell narrative on live show, but you can find it. I'm also on Twitter at Warmaster_TPM. I'm Fights with Dice on Instagram. So yeah, basically in every podcast aggregator, whether it be an Apple or Spotify or any, you listen on Android or whatever, you can find it. So I'm really proud of the show and the people that we have on. It's fun, and I keep a very conversational style. And I hear that look, and we're also we're family friendly. So that's another thing that is uncommon sometimes in podcasts. But you can listen around your kids if you needed to.
Do you find that difficult not to swear?
So I'm used to, again, for doing it this long.
Used to it, yeah.
Yeah, but when I get around people that in IRL at conventions and stuff, if we ever get to do that again, one of the first things I hear is like, "Wow, you swear a lot." Like comparatively, yes, but I also want to make sure that it's accessible to folks, and this is just one way to get the message across. But yeah, anywhere that people find podcasts, they can find the show, and if they're even slightly interested in Warhammer, I really love talking with people about how they what they need to get into the hobby, how do they even do it in the first place, whatever. So my DMs are always open to folks that have an interest.
Fantastic. All right. Now, as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share, or anything I didn't ask you that you think I still need to cover?
No, man, those were great questions, and I appreciate you letting me kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent on some of those. But this is, again, it's a little bit of self-evaluation. Did I just say that? Did I mean that? Yes, I do. I meant everything, and it's one of those we have to keep asking ourselves these questions, and that's what really gets us a little bit further ahead.
It's really cool being interviewed on another podcast, isn't it?
Sometimes, yeah. Seeing how it is, I'm worried that I talk too much. Yeah.
All right, Paul Murphy, thank you so much for coming on today. I genuinely do appreciate this.
Much appreciated, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.